Wizard, how you doing, bro?
Hey.
Sup? What's your question?
So, my question is, back in like 2005, I watched the BlizzardCon panel about class design, and one of the things was, hold on, I gotta turn off YouTube. Okay, so in 2005, there was a principle called the Chains of Ice principle. So in the alpha of World of Warcraft, they had a thing called Chains of Ice, and it allowed mages to essentially CC all the packs in a dungeon. So all you had to do is just this one character. You bring this one character to a dungeon, and it trivializes every pull.
Yeah.
Fast forward to today, AOE tanking pretty much does that, and it takes away the agency of everybody else in the group.
Yeah.
So is AOE tanking problematic, and would nerfing it or removing it in a certain way add more agency to players in dungeons and raids?
See, I would answer yes, but then no, for a number of reasons. So yes, I think one of the problems I have with tanking specifically in World of Warcraft is it does not appear to mean much. The second you've hit a boss twice, you have all the threat in the world and you will never lose the threat, right? For tanks, the biggest thing that they usually have to worry about is positioning of the boss and maybe using a cooldown on a specific hit. That's really what tanks do in World of Warcraft right now. In terms of DPS, they're okay-ish, and some of the best tanks can really pull out decent DPS for a tank, but they're not really DPS. That's not really their job in any way, shape, or form. When it comes to major mob packs, they have so many abilities that can deal with mobs and sort of 20-plus back pulls that it doesn't really matter if you're a tank, right? You can basically take care of whatever is thrown at you. The flip side of that is Blizzard tried that. I think it was World of Draenor, where Blizzard tried to go back to the days of actually having to hit every individual target and keep threat on those targets, and it didn't work. People riled against it. People were absolutely unhappy with how their tanks worked. And I think one of the reasons for that is Blizzard didn't compensate for the amount of new problems that tanks were going to have to face due to threat by also reining in the amount of burst damage their classes could do. And for a lot of classes, that burst damage wasn't something that they could help, right? Basically, their first hit is going to be bursty, and there's nothing they can do about that.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point, is like the agency of so when, like, for example, your group is a tank, 3 DPS, and a healer. Those 3 DPS are generic roles that 24 of the 36 specs in the game are pretty much are classified into. Yeah. And would making, like, for example, a sub role like an off tank, a crowd control, hard CC, would that add more dynamics to the dungeon as a group design aspect, or would that be a little too much?
Sorry, repeat your question quickly. Just the gist of it.
So, like, AOE tanking, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I've been playing the game for a long time.
Uh-huh.
When I made my warlock because that warlock could control a lot of mobs. I could banish something, I could fear something, I could sick a pet and tank something, off tank something. So as a warlock, I can do something more than just damage.
Yeah, we were CC kings for quite a while.
Yes. So then AOE tanking in Wrath of the Lich King kind of just made that pointless. Like, if you banish something, you're kind of just trolling your group. Yeah. Because you can't do damage to it, and all you want to do is cleave things down fast enough to beat a timer.
Yeah. I mean, okay, sorry, yeah?
So I'm saying, like, would nerfing AOE tanking and adding some of that sort of crowd control instead of the AOE tanking as a form of crowd control, would adding that sort of crowd control back to other classes and other specs make the groups more dynamic?
All right, I get what you mean. First, just quickly wanted to respond to Mark. Mark, I agree with you. In World of Draenor, I had tremendous fun playing tank. Not everyone did, though. Lots of people complained, which is sort of World of Warcraft. Some people love when the game becomes more intricate. A lot of people don't. Now, to your point, there's a number of ways that we can attack this, right? We could attack this by absolutely nerfing the amount of AoE that tanks can do and the amount of AoE pulls that tanks can do, or we can make mobs more dangerous. This is what Blizzard achieved during Cataclysm. Again, so many fucks complained that Cataclysm dungeons were too hard. It happens to be my favorite time of dungeons. Right at the start of Cataclysm, if you wanted to pull 5 mobs and not CC at least 3 of them, it's a wipe. Try again, right? Because the mobs were so difficult to take down, and they would oftentimes apply their own CCs, which is stuff that you can absolutely implement into the game, right? By giving mobs the ability to CC players, it sort of forces this banishment of a mob, or the fear or the stun of a mob, because if it's not feared or stunned, it will absolutely CC your healer or your tank and create just mayhem on the battlefield, right? So you could do it by adding intricacy to the mobs and how the mobs are available for play, or by removing AOE. The problem with removing AOE is it's gonna have to come with a fundamental redesign of how tanking works in World of Warcraft. A lot of the tanks will have to be redesigned from the ground up to actually play around this. My personal opinion is I would settle for dungeons with fewer mobs, where the mobs are actually more interesting to fight, rather than what Blizzard does right now within their dungeons, where mobs are effectively fodder to slow you down so that you can ultimately kill the bosses. Which, how much fun is that actually? Like,
not very.
Let's be honest, in terms of fun, think of the first boss in what's it, Halls of Atonement. Is it Halls of Atonement? Might be Halls of Atonement. Think of the first boss there, where you're basically running from platform to platform, killing a bunch of fucking mobs, and then finally you get to pull the boss. No one has fun there. It's not fun to do that. You just kind of have to do it so that you can kill the first boss. Well, what if there were fewer mobs, but those mobs actually had mechanics? You actually had to dodge things and be aware of things and CC things. So make every single trash pack a challenge that people enjoy engaging with, a mini puzzle as it were, and then the bosses is the major puzzle, right? That's the one that you want to solve ultimately. Rather than just... And it's not that Blizzard doesn't do that. There are trash packs in World of Warcraft that does have that fun element to them, because they do something very specific that you have to be aware of. But for the most part, trash in World of Warcraft really just feels like it's there to slow you fucking down, right? That's really it. So yeah, I would say fewer, because that immediately solves the problem of AOE tanking. Imagine if every trash pack you pulled only had 3 mobs, but those 3 mobs did very weird and wonderful things that sort of allowed for various playstyles to take them out. So you could either fear them or stun them or burst them down if you could, something to that effect. You could suddenly remove a lot of the AOE abilities of tanks and just allow tanks to bold threat on individual mobs easier. So a tank sort of has to keep threat on different mobs. I think it was Warlords of Draenor, where Blizzard tried to go back to the old school sort of, you have to hit each individual mob in order to gain threat. The problem is, if you're surrounded by 15 fucking mobs, how? It's not doable. If I don't have AOE threat generation, by the time I'm on the 3rd one, 13 of the mobs have fucked off and is now hitting my healer. So my healer is running around panic and screaming and being absolutely hysterical because I can't, like, physically can't do enough damage to all of these mobs. Not quick enough anyways. So that would be my solution. What, like, is that something that you think could work, or?
Oh yeah, but I think the big thing is like just adding in more gameplay agency to the other roles of the group, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so healer is important, tank is important, but you could throw anyone in DPS.
Yes.
And honestly, like, if you look at, like, for example, in Legion, a tank can solo like plus 21s, plus 22s. Yeah, they can't beat the timer, but they could solo it because it's not engaging.
I mean, you could go again one or two ways there. You could either make it more sort of similar, so you could homogenize it a bit more to give more agency in that sense, or you could double down and make it even more different to where tanks can't do that, right? The question is, what fantasies do you want to play with? I think World of Warcraft, I do think World of Warcraft suffers from over-homogenization in most cases. Like we just spoke about at the beginning of the stream, every class is a boulder spender. It's more homogenized than it's ever been in the history of World of Warcraft. And yet, it seems like Blizzard constantly tell us that they want this class fantasy thing. And then you look at the different classes and you go, well, they're basically the same fucking thing. So what is this fantasy that I'm... like, the only fantasy really is the color of my abilities being different and the icons being different, but they do the same things. They're all boulder spender. I have a bunch of things that will bold something, and then I have something that will spend something. What's so different in terms of how I'm supposed to be playing?
Exactly.
There is, of course, we could go the extreme route and we could remove the Trinity, but I think that would be too extreme for a while.
Yeah. Well, I think the main tank should still be the tank of the group, like for fighting a boss.
Yeah.
But but for like example, a plate wearing class should be able to at least tank one mob in a dungeon, at least one.
Yeah, but then
maybe not the boss, but like a mob.
But you are going to run into issues there, right? Because there's a balancing question that needs to be answered there, I think. How would you deal with the balance there? Because if all melee classes can at least tank something, what would be achieved? I guess I would ask. If, for example, all melee wearing plate could tank something theoretically, what becomes the purpose of the tank then? Only to tank bosses.
You still tank the boss, and as a tank, you're essentially there for crowd control. So you're still pretty much already on crowd control duty as the main tank of the group. But like if you have like a DK or an arms warrior in your group, you can stick them on like a second mob, and because they're kind of taking damage in, for example, like an arms warrior, they can get like a counter attack and get a big damage boost on attacking that one mob. But like if they get two mobs on them, that counter attack only deals with the one mob problem, and the second mob will pretty much just destroy them.
Yeah, I get what you mean, and it could be an interesting way to explore, or an interesting avenue to explore. I just think it's also a difficult avenue to explore.
That's my problem is Ian. I don't think Ian can do that.
No, you're gonna have to I don't even know if it's just Ian. I think a game as complex as World of Warcraft, with the amount of specs that it has in the game, is always gonna have trouble. It's just, there is a limit to all creativity, and when you have 37 specs in the game that each needs some kind of niche that it does reasonably well, how creative can you actually be before you just run out of creativity? And I feel like World of Warcraft has reached that limit, which is why I'm one of the people that actually believe that specs should disappear, that we should go back to a talent system where you have affliction, demonology, and destruction talents, but you are a warlock. You're not an affliction warlock or a demonology warlock or a destruction warlock. You're a warlock, and all warlocks have the same spells. Their focuses may be different though. So if you're a demonology warlock, your focus is that your demons are doing most of the damage. But whether you are demonology, destruction, or affliction, you have the exact same demons. Your focus will just be different. Whereas the affliction warlock will have all the demons the demonology warlock has, only their dots is really what they're focused on. So this is where most of their damage will come from. But I feel like that could do a lot more for class fantasy, also dealing with the homogenization problem of World of Warcraft in a nutshell. Because in my opinion, Blizzard moved away from the old school talent trees because they felt that it was too difficult to keep adding new talents, and they were sort of running out of ways to add new talents. Then they went in the hard spec direction. The problem is that was a ticking time bomb. It wasn't actually a solution to a problem. You were replacing an immediate problem with a future problem, and the future problem has now come home to roost. How many expansions has it been since we've got new talents? Seriously, how many expansions has it been since we have gotten new things for our class that isn't a borrowed power system? Like something that you can say, this is mine, this is new, and it's something that I can incorporate into my playstyle. It's been years. And after a while starts to feel a little bit stale, you know? You want something new. It's fun when it's new. I remember we used to complain so often, like way back in the day. This was back with TBC, Wrath, even Cataclysm. We used to complain so much because every expansion would fundamentally change your class. Like your class would get a rework and now you have to learn your class from scratch because everything's changed. And now I look back at that and I go, why did we complain? Fuck, we should have kept our mouths shut because this is more boring. Like every expansion, it's the same. And that's not fun unless you're lucky enough that your class was broken in the previous expansion and now it should get a rework because it is broken in the previous expansion, right? But there are classes.
To add to that, like when it came to class design, they always reworked the classes. They never made it so you could play what you were familiar with, while also adding in new stuff for you to try out as new things.
True. Look, it goes to the mindset of the original Blizzard developers. This is one of the reasons the story in Shadowlands isn't working. It's also one of the reasons the classes isn't really working. But they could. Old school World of Warcraft was 100% designed as a one-shot D&D campaign. And this went for everything that they designed, including classes. Classes in World of Warcraft were never designed with the long term in mind. So thinking to yourself, this is expansion 0, but there's going to be expansion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I cannot give players 300 abilities in expansion 0, because what the fuck am I going to give them by expansion 6, right? Like, there's already 300 abilities. How many more abilities can I design? So you want to think of it as an MMO isn't a finished game. So you want to think of it as not a finished game. So you basically want to go and say, right, this is expansion 0, and we're going to give them, say, 5 or 6 abilities. This allows us to add 2 or 3 new abilities every expansion, and it gives us leeway over the course of, say, 7 or 8 expansions, where we're only going to run into trouble at expansion 8. But nothing stops us from doing a little bit of pruning, maybe a little bit of merging, maybe a bit of redesign. Final Fantasy is right now busy with massive redesigns for a lot of their classes, removing certain redundant abilities and making it part of the base kit, something to that effect. Black Mages had some, Accolonn, I think it's called. They had Accolonn removed and made part baseline in order to make the spec play better overall, and also to remove an extra button that now frees up space for future buttons to be added, right?
Oh yeah. No, that ability in general was like push button, have the ability to cast your spells for 15 seconds. Yeah. Refresh every 15 seconds. It was annoying.
Exactly. So you need to keep in mind that no expansion in an MMO is the final product. An expansion in an MMO is an ongoing product. So you have to always think, this is, by the way, one of the biggest issues I have with Legion's artifact weapons. Every single person loved the Legion artifact weapons, but the reason the Legion artifact weapons could not be continued, and I don't think there's a single person that would have complained. Can you imagine in Shadowlands, in BFA, if Blizzard said, right, you're keeping your artifact weapon, we're giving you more skins for your artifact weapon so you can collect more skins, and we're giving you new abilities and passive abilities on your artifact weapon. People would have fucking lost it. People loved the artifact system. The reason the artifact system couldn't continue, it was so overpowered already in Legion that it was impossible to add more things to it in subsequent expansions. If you want to fix that, you shouldn't have had it that powerful in Legion already. It should have built in power. You should have made it fun in Legion, but you should have given yourself room to do more with it in the future. And I really hope Blizzard learns this. Like, I really hope that we start seeing systems that doesn't just try to sell tickets now. And I get it, Blizzard have their backs on against the wall. They want to sell as many games as possible, so they want to make things big and chunky and beautiful. But at the end of the day, it's better if you think long-term rather than think in the now.
Oh yeah, they definitely need to work on their evergreen systems. Like,
yeah,
things that exist outside of the expansion seasonal structure. That is actual
Absolutely.
gameplay, not just, AFK farm a old raid for a mount.
Absolutely agree with you there. Absolutely agree with you. So, do you have anything else that you wanted to add, or
Nope,
is
that was
it?
my question.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the question. It was a fun one to explore.
You're welcome. Have a
Thank
good day.
you. Have a nice day, dude. Really appreciate it.